The relationship between South Africa and the United States has swung between strategic cooperation and intense friction, shaped by historical tensions and recent political dramas. Once strained by apartheid-era sanctions, ties improved post-1994, but under Biden, tensions have escalated. The U.S. frowns on South Africa's vocal support for Palestine and its ICJ case against Israel, while Pretoria resents Washington's perceived meddling. Elon Musk, a South African-born billionaire, has fueled controversy by criticizing SA's government, sparking backlash. Meanwhile, AfriForum and the DA's visit to the U.S. raised suspicions of seeking foreign interference. Diplomatic spats intensified as U.S. Ambassador Reuben Brigety, after accusing SA of arming Russia, resigned following backlash, while former SA ambassador to the U.S., Lana Marks, saw her term cut short under Trump. With growing BRICS alignment and shifting global power dynamics, SA-U.S. relations teeter between necessary partnership and looming political divorce. Under the Trump administration, South Africa's ambassador to the United States Embrahim Rasool is no longer welcome and considered persona non grata,
We have some news right now. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has declared South Africa's ambassador to the United States persona non grata, saying he's no longer welcome in America after the ambassador criticized Donald Trump. Rubio called the ambassador a, quote, race-baiting politician. This comes after a social media post of Embrahim Rasool, the ambassador, showing that the diplomat accusing Donald Trump of promoting global white supremacy. On Twitter, Rubio wrote, quote, South Africa's ambassador to the United States is no longer welcome in our great country. Embrahim Rasool is a race-baiting politician who hates America and hates POTUS. We have nothing to discuss with him, so he is considered persona non grata. This also comes amid deteriorating relations between the United States and South Africa, coming at least in part due to Elon Musk, who is not only Donald Trump's senior advisor, but is a native of South Africa. These tensions are only going to continue to rise between the United States and South Africa. I'll do a full breakdown on my Substack shortly about what this all means, so be sure to subscribe for free at the link in my bio and follow along for all the news you need to know about. More to come soon.
The U.S. just expelled South Africa remains keen on mending relations, with President Ramaphosa readying a trade proposal for Trump.
It's not Donald Trump. It's not Donald Trump at all. And this is my guess, right? I feel that we are battling Benjamin Netanyahu as South Africa. And it just so happens that Donald Trump is the biggest political strumpet in history. And he's just he's allowing himself to be used by Benjamin Netanyahu. But the person who we're actually battling is Benjamin Netanyahu. Remember when South Africa took Israel to the ICJ and we won the case? We are now facing that retribution, if I may put it that way. If you look at the current situation right now with global politics, it's the reason why America's relationship with Europe has completely deteriorated. Because if you remember, it was the European Union that said they would honor the decision of the ICJ if Benjamin Netanyahu was to set foot in Europe. We are battling Benjamin Netanyahu. It's the reason why the South African ambassador was declared persona non grata. South Africa is acting, we are the uppity nigger to America and Israel. We are not following the script. They are not used to an African country challenging their global dominance the way South Africa is.
Marco Rubio and Donald Trump say that South Africa's ambassador is no longer welcome in the United States because he's a race-baiting politician, he hates America, and he hates the President of the United States. Goodbye. See you never. Donald Trump is going after South Africa because they are a race-baiting country, and they literally have racism in the country against white people, and they are murdering people, and it's really, really bad. So Donald Trump was like, maybe you should change. And then South Africa was like, maybe not. And Donald Trump was like, okay.
Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania yet again. And yes, once again on the issue of South Africa and the United States. I've been warning South Africa's government for years that their actions run contrary to U.S. national security interests, and they do so at their own peril. Since 2018, South Africa has been ineligible for the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, and the Trump and Biden administrations look the other way, allowing them to continue, despite the fact that the introduction of expropriation without compensation was clear violation of the AGOA Act. You cannot be a participant in the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act and get duty-free access to the U.S. market if you do not respect private property rights. The mere introduction of that bill is an abrogation of property rights. Now it's been enacted, and they're clearly in violation of it, and they should not be eligible for it. But the transgressions or the grievances the United States has with South Africa are far greater than just that, and far greater than what people are trying to tell you they're about. We've heard a lot of nonsense, a lot of teeth gnashing, a lot of complaints about the Afrikaner refugee program and about the U.S. cutting aid to South Africa. But this is a consequence of South Africa's long list of egregious offenses against the United States. And I've mentioned them in a previous video. You can find that video in the link below this one, and you go back and watch that video from a few days ago, listing just a small smattering of the many things that South Africa's done that are contrary to our national security interests and threaten U.S. national security, and not smart. Anyway, this effort has been going on for some time. Last year, on February 6th of 2024, last year in the Biden administration, there was a House Resolution 7256 that was brought up on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. And this is a bipartisan bill to get a review of the bilateral relation between the United States and South Africa and calling for removal from AGOA. And that was a consequence of many actions. So this has gone unnoticed. I've reported on many things happening, and I've emphasized the executive order, how Donald Trump specifically called out the ANC's support for Hamas and not taking it to the International Court of Justice for its actions in its terror attack on October 7th, 2023, ludicrously taking Israel for genocide when doesn't meet the legal definition of genocide. So I report on that, and that now some analysts are focusing on. I've said that since the 7th of February when this executive order was issued. I've also pointed out something that is completely being missed by politicians in South Africa, either intentionally because they're embarrassed or because they're too dim to pay attention. And that is the following sentence: reinvigorating its relations with Iran to develop commercial, military, and nuclear arrangements. The United States is not going to sit idly by and give you $500 million of our taxpayer money every year when you're helping Iran with a nuclear program or cooperating with them on nuclear programs. Get real. Meanwhile, unnoticed in the media, completely overlooked, is the fact that this is not Elon Musk. I've said this repeatedly over and over again. Watch my videos. I've been consistent. The reason for this executive order is not because Elon Musk was born in South Africa. This is idiotic analysis. And Cyril Ramaphosa calling Elon Musk to get the policy changed is beyond ludicrous. It goes outside diplomatic channels, which is something he whined the U.S. was doing. He's the one actually doing it. Isn't it funny how the ANC always commits all the offenses and blames the other guy for the things that they did? Anyway, I've warned people that it's not Elon Musk. Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Marsha Blackburn in the Senate have been hard on this issue of South Africa for a long time. Cruz is the chairman of the Subcommittee for African Relations in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and a very powerful senator in the United States. And you ignore him at your peril rather than engage him. But he's not alone. There are also Democrats for this. Now, there's a letter published 1 week ago today, which the media has completely overlooked, completely ignored. This letter is from 4 congressmen in the United States House of Representatives. They are Donald John Bacon from Nebraska, 2nd Congressional District, been there since 2017. Addison Graves Joe Wilson, known as Joe Wilson. He is from South Carolina, 2nd Congressional District, been there since 2001. That's a while. Thomas B. Tiffany from Wisconsin, 7th District, and Andrew Ogles from Tennessee's 5th Congressional District. Those 4 are all Republicans, and they draft a letter to President Trump on the 11th of February. Let me read some of the key points. I'm not going to read the whole letter to you. Other people have done that. But I'm going to read to you the key points that are salient that you need to pay attention to, ANC, Rise Mzansi, and all the other people that want to criticize the United States. The Republic of South Africa is in apparent need of a reminder of what happens when American interests are marginalized. That should be a very chilling statement for politicians in South Africa who want to call us names. Due to its numerous human rights abuses, its vendetta against the state of Israel, and its embrace of the Chinese Communist Party, we urge you to revoke South Africa's preference benefits under the African Growth and Opportunity Act. We would suggest that you consider suspending diplomatic ties unless that government is prepared to engage constructively with our own. Wow. Now, that's a statement that's true. South Africa's government is not engaged constructively with us. The Lady R incident is a perfect example of it. The U.S. was aware that that ship, even if we didn't have any intelligence, we saw on social media people reporting that a ship docked there at night and unloaded cargo, and other cargoes load up. And we saw the number plate of vehicles from the special forces that were there and others that were involved in that. And then the government denied it, dismissed it, and covered it up for months. The United States quietly, diplomatically, through Ambassador Reuben Brigety, approached the South African government in Pretoria and asked for clarification and an understanding of what was going on. The ANC, in their arrogance, refused to deal with our diplomatic overtures that were discreet, polite, professional, and diplomatic. So after 5 months of being stonewalled, Ambassador Brigety, with a green light from Washington, D.C., exposed to the world what he believed was happening, and the United States government believed was happening with the Lady R in Simonstown. But it took 5 months. Anyway, so this is a very startling line. And it's very partisan, of course, but it's very startling nonetheless to see this on congressional letterhead. The ethno-nationalist gangster regime in Pretoria. Oh, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care where you sit in the political spectrum. That is a harsh statement. And actually, I think you'd be hard-pressed to deny that it's true. Pretoria's human rights abuses against their own citizens likely constitute a violation of 19 U.S. Code 3703. Specifically, the South African government has failed to demonstrate a consistent fidelity to the rule of law. Well, I think that's a fair statement. So it goes on. And down here it says, importantly, however, even the previous administration's own assessment of South Africa's human rights practices found significant abuses, including unlawful or arbitrary killings, arbitrary arrest or detention, serious government corruption, trafficking in persons, and extensive gender-based violence, including femicide. These are damning allegations. And this is not because of Elon Musk, and this is not because of AfriForum, this is not because of solidarity. As I've told you from the outset, if you think AfriForum has the influence that you're giving it, that's like the people think the CIA is everywhere. You guys really don't get how the world works. They don't have that kind of influence. Pretoria's continued insistence on undermining American security and foreign policy interests are similarly disqualifying under the eligibility requirements. Then they go on to talk about South Africa's baseless claim before the International Court of Justice. And then continuing later on, here's another point that's brought out. And this one I haven't talked about because I didn't know if this was publicly available information. In fact, South Africa has for over a decade allowed two Hamas-controlled charities, and they use quotes, the Al-Qassa Foundation and the Al-Quds Foundation, to operate within South Africa's borders. For decades, officials of the South African government have acted as Hamas propagandists, urging the international community to lift trade sanctions and otherwise engage with the U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization. So, and then this is something else I've mentioned as one of the egregious things, and I listed in my previous video, and this is about Taiwan. In October, several members of Congress sent a letter to your predecessor, Biden, and encouraged him to confront South Africa over its self-abasing advocacy of the Chinese Communist Party. At that point, South Africa had, without cause and in violation of a 26-year-old agreement, told Taiwan to move its representative office, which it owns, to Pretoria. And now they've demanded they move and turn it into a trade office. At the bottom, South Africa is simply not deserving of duty-free access to the American market. Andrew Ogles, Joe Wilson, Tom Tiffany, and Don Bacon. Again, folks, this obsession with Elon Musk and with this misrepresentation of what's going on here is not doing South Africa any good. If you think you can make it with the BRICS without the support of the largest economy in the world, your second largest trading partner, the most generous foreign aid donor in the world, more power to you. Unfortunately, hundreds of thousands, nay, millions of South Africans will suffer your foolhardy arrogance. So turn down the rhetoric, start behaving humbly, and get your president to seek an audience with President Trump to address this. But the aid is gone. Probably isn't coming back. What you need to do now is damage control and prevent sanctions from coming and suspension from AGOA. Suspension from AGOA is probably coming, and you may not be able to change that. But sanctions are next on the table after that. And if you think Donald Trump is playing around, you're not paying attention to current events. All right, South Africa, good luck. It's going to be a bumpy ride out there. What say you? Have you heard about this story? Maybe from another content creator, but you haven't heard it from mainstream media in the U.S. or in South Africa. It just isn't being reported on. Why? Because it runs counter to the racist narrative that's being perpetrated in South African media, attacking white South Africans who have nothing to do with this and blaming Solidarity and AfriForum for something they have no control over because they once upon a time visited the States and asked for the United States to pay attention to what was going on in South Africa. At least they tried. What has the ANC done and the DA done to get you to pay attention to what's going on in South Africa? Very little. Cheers.
South Africa's ambassador to the United States, Embrahim Rasool, has been ejected by that country, or at least we think he's been ejected. That country's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, tweeted, because that's the way to make decisions these days, that Rasool was no longer welcome in that country and that he was persona non grata for being a race baiter. Rasool's great sin, speaking to the Mapungubwe Institute, Mistra, here in South Africa, about the global moment we're experiencing right now and saying that Trump was leading a white supremacist movement. I mean, he's not wrong. He tweeted earlier this year he would not be coming to the G20 that is due to be hosted in Johannesburg later this year because South Africa is doing, wait for it, very bad things. Apparently those very bad things we're doing are the themes of the G20, which is solidarity, equality and sustainability. Who is Marco Rubio and why is he so obsessed with knocking South Africa? Well, here's my theory. Marco Rubio is not your typical Republican. His parents and his grandparents were from Cuba and not necessarily legal immigrants either. Some of them were deported. Rubio ran for US president back in 2016 against Donald Trump and was very, very critical of Trump. But like so many others now under Trump's cult leadership, like J.D. Vance and Elon Musk, he had an about turn and now spends his time praising Trump's most egregious decisions, including his actions against Ukraine, which Rubio was a firm, staunch supporter of before he joined Trump's camp. So why is Marco Rubio so obsessed with South Africa? I wonder if Marco Rubio, who is Secretary of State, and just to clarify, Secretary of State is kind of their top diplomat. He's responsible for all their foreign affairs, for all their diplomats, for all their foreign policy across the world. And I think this man's conscience is torturing him. When Donald Trump instructed Marco Rubio to withdraw US aid overnight, early on in this administration, federal workers sat Rubio down and told him, if you do this in the way you're planning on doing it, 1 million children who are being treated for severe malnutrition will be at risk. 166,000 people will certainly die from malaria and 200,000 children will be paralyzed by polio. Those numbers don't even touch on what the impact was on HIV. This man has over 1 million lives on his conscience, potentially. So I think he is hitting down because he is under such pressure and we're a convenient target. And because, as one reporter in the New York Times put it, South Africa is DEI personified. And for them, South Africa stands for those very values: diversity, equity and inclusion, solidarity, equality, sustainability. They hate us for standing for those things which they despise, those humane values that make us who we are as a civilization. So I think he's attacking us because he knows deep down that he's going to go down in the history books as the villain.